Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome to another glorious day over here. I know we are drinking hot coffee today, but don't worry, we have an exciting program for you today. So you are going to be energized. You're going to be up and at 'em and ready to go. So while we let some folks come in, we are going to give you a little housekeeping. My name is Sadie Uribe, and I'm the media producer for the Los Angeles Regional SBDC Network. The SBDC is a national program with over 1,000 locations across the country, helping to stimulate economic growth through business advising and development. We offer no-cost services to the local business through funding provided by the U.S. Small Business Administration, SBA, and from the California Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development, GoBiz. The Los Angeles Regional Small Business Development Center network serves small businesses throughout Los Angeles, Santa Barbara, and Ventura counties. And we offer no-cost business advising, meaning you can meet one-on-one via phone or Zoom to address your specific needs and challenges. And we also offer virtual training, such as this awesome workshop, to help and adapt to grow your business. So on that note, Lori, oh my God, I'm so excited to be with you again today. I know I'm going to learn lots today.
Well, awesome. And thank you so much. And for anybody who's thought, where's Lauren? Lauren is in a strategic retreat, which at this point in time, she may be wishing she's here with us instead. I won't put those words into her mouth, but who knows on that? But that's where Lauren is. So I want to say welcome back. I hope everybody had a turkey day that was happy, didn't eat too much, or at least took a walk afterwards to wear it off. So hopefully that happened. So a couple things we're going to talk about before we get started today. First of all, can you guys believe it's almost December? Do you realize it's the end of the year upon us? I was just telling Sadie, I kind of like the end of the year because suddenly you get these holidays that are built in. It's like that no excuse time off. But I felt like over the Thanksgiving holiday, I got finally caught up. I was just like, okay, now it's time to have fun. And I was like, okay, back to work. So I'm waiting for the December holiday when I can be caught up and have some more fun. Okay, guys, got a little bit of an involved myth buster for you today. And really, it's kind of staying with this theme that I have about looking at reality. That's my newest theme, looking at reality. And I want to talk about forecasting. Now, when we talk about forecasting, I'm not necessarily speaking of just brand new companies starting out. Every company, big companies, companies that have been around for eons of years must do forecasting, right? Now, when you have an existing company, you have the advantage of doing the forecasting based on historical data that actually occurred. So you can look up and you can say, well, our sales were this year, we got this customer's buying this amount, etc. But at the same time, you have to make sure the forecasting makes sense. Now, if you're a smaller company and you don't have historical data, or I would say in times we have now, the economy and everything's changed so much year to year, the historical data may not be actually accurate. But specifically to the small companies, when you're doing forecasting, you want to think about how companies actually grow historically. And this is what I mean by this. I see people do these forecasting forms, they download it, and I'm not a fan of these templates. I'm a fan of creating things with logic and not just filling out some template you downloaded, but we won't talk about that in this session. But I see people do things like they take the expenses and they just line them up across the columns. They take a sales forecast and they say, just add 10% or 20%. Well, right away, just the act of doing that means the forecast is inaccurate. Because if I look at a company, look at the smallest company, and you just think in your mind's eye, even if you haven't seen the financial, no company grows at this 10% rate. No company increases sales while the expenses stay the same. What happens is it increases incrementally. They increase sales because they got a customer through some marketing endeavor. Then maybe what they have to do is spend some more money on the marketing to get there. Then what they may have to do is hire a part-time person or a contract labor. They may have to pay for some legal assistance to get a new contract. All these different elements, which consist of the expenses under the overhead, may be impacted as the sales grows. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that when you're doing your forecasting, you look at not only the cost of goods to make sure it represents the numbers sold, but you also look at each expense to make sure it's in alignment. Let me explain it in another way. For many years, I was involved with an investment bank that what they would do is they would send me the financials of the companies that wanted funding. And they would ask me a very simple question. Do I believe management knows what they're doing when they did the forecast? Okay. And I would run percentages of, and I would look at each and every single account and I would see how they changed the accounts as the sales grew. If the sales grew 50%, 10%, whatever, I would look at the individual accounts to see if it showed movement as well. If I see that the sales is growing like this and the amounts are staying the same, or they just show somebody hiring, but they don't show any additional purchases, such as a new computer, new software, what have you, I could tell that they just plugged in numbers. So how do you get your forecasting accurate based on historical data and you actually start to look at this alignment? Yes, you check the numbers, just like I said, but the way I like to explain it is you want to look at what Einstein called his thought experiments. Okay, this story's told in the Lori format, so bear with it on this. But the way I see it is Einstein sat with his feet up on the couch drinking a Starbucks, right? But if you studied his theories at all, you would know that he imagined what it would be like to ride a beam of light. Now, I can't even come close to imagining that, right? But if you can imagine what it's like to ride a beam of light, you can imagine what it's like to increase sales. You can look in your shop door, whether it's your home office or whatever, and say, okay, I see additional sales. What do I see? What do I see happening logistically? Do I see another human? What are they doing? Oh, they're working on a computer. I need to buy another computer. So you do a thought experiment where you walk through different scenes, almost like those cartoons where they show you, they just flip a new picture and it brings it together. You see a picture in that month. You see a picture of the sales. And then you look around you and say, what is these new sales requiring that I have? And then you write it down. Don't write it down in a number. See, that's why with the templates, people download the templates and they start putting in numbers. They're missing an entire aspect called the brainstorming function, where you're imagining and you're saying, what we need to hire somebody when the sales get, we need to do, make these little notes, then take those notes and turn them into financial numbers. And regarding sales forecast, you always want to say, how did we get there? If you say sales increased 10%, you should be able to say, we did a flyer, it got this return on investment. This is how the sales got there. You want to have a reason, because growth happens because of triggers or impetus. Things happen to cause growth. And all things that happen typically have a dollar attached or an activity attached. So you want to imagine the growth, imagine the activity, and then place the dollar next to the activity that would have allowed that growth. Okay, that's my story on forecasting. I'm bringing that up today, as I will be also addressing things today in the show based on the fact that it is near year end, like I said. So year end is that time when we want to do the planning, we want to do the forecasting, and we're going to talk in a minute about the accounting and the other planning that we want to do. I've got one last webinar coming up. Sadie's got the information, or going to put it in chat if she hadn't. That's my legal structure and tax advantages, where I go through the different legal structures and how they are taxed and explain this. There is a lot of people that have confusion on this, and the reason is it's confusing. And so I try to break it down as simple as I can. And my upcoming shows in December, the next 2 weeks, I've got Alex Vasquez. He's a favorite that comes on. We're going to have just an all-around discussion about AI. It's going to go in many different avenues, but he's going to talk about how he's instructing his clients in his marketing and web design world to use AI. And then I'm going to have Samara come on. I promised I'd bring her back on. We're talking about the ever-changing laws of HR. I want to talk about AB5 a little bit again, because that's still not fully understood. And then I have a guest coming up for the 20th as well. I just haven't made an announcement announcement on that yet because I'm collecting some data yet, but I will be telling you about that as well. So with that, what we're going to do today is we're going to kind of continue a little bit, if you will, on a discussion that we had right before Thanksgiving. But before Thanksgiving, as you know, Clarissa was on and we talked all about QuickBooks, specific to QuickBooks Online. Today, I'm very excited to be able to have Dalia Fogenay back on. She is an accountant dedicated to empowering businesses through effective financial management. As the founder of DF Accounting Services, she has been instrumental in helping numerous clients streamline their operations, improve their financial health, and grow their business. Dalia, thank you so much and welcome to the show.
Hello, everyone.
So good to have you back today. You know, I want to
Thank
start out
you.
by talking about DF Accounting because you've got a unique structure. You've got a lot of support under your umbrella. And I want our audience first to know about the company. And then they also will get an opportunity, as you talk about yourself, know your level of expertise as we start talking about these very intense subjects. So why don't you give us a little bit about your starting of the company and how the company helps clients?
Well, after being in the industry, accounting industry over 12 years, I decided to open up my own business. I was actually working for an agency and I was like a salary professional. So pretty much what I'll do was go to company and develop their accounting softwares. And for example, someone goes on maternity leave, I would take over until that person come back, or I would train the new person who was going to be the permanent role. So I was able to work in so many different industries throughout all those years. And one day I just realized, why don't I open up my own business? So I went ahead, opened up my business, and I've been in business ever since. We focus mainly on bookkeeping, just because I feel like that's the foundation of every single business. Rather they want to use an accounting software or an Excel sheet, I think it's very important for business owners to start there. A lot of business owners or people who want to have a side business, a side hustle, they get overwhelmed just thinking about accounting. So my company really focused on making it easier for them. And I do a lot of one-on-ones. I teach people how to do their own bookkeeping, or I take over if they're ready for that step.
Perfect. And you know, one of the things I like about people who have experience going in all the other industries, it means they have an overall understanding of the accounting process rather than just the process for that one industry, right? And they know how to adapt. So given that we said process and setup, I think we should start there, Dalia, and I'm going to let you kind of go where you want to go with it. But I'm going to tell you what I notice that most small companies think that isn't necessarily correct. When they think, okay, I got to do my accounting, they immediately think of a software program and they think of bookkeeping and they think, okay, then I do a check. They fail to understand that there's a whole setup of the processes that the accounting, whether it's Excel or software, like you said, it feeds into it. That's the end goal. But it's like anything, it's kind of like saying, okay, I got to ship all my stuff to the customers. Okay, I'm done. No, you realize they get that there's a whole process to getting it shipped out to the customer. There's a whole process about having your financial set up properly as well. So why don't you just talk us about setting it up independent of what size or what we're using? What do we need to consider when we're getting a proper setup system for our accounting?
Well, the first thing I would consider is to start small. Or if you're a tech savvy person and you believe you can handle an accounting software, then so be it. But
Yep.
what I have come to understand, when I bring in new clients, I dive into their accounting software and it ends up being a major cleanup job for me. A lot of the accounts are not reconciled. A lot of the accounts are not set up properly. People are having expenses hit different accounts rather than the account it should be hitting. Some things are in the balance sheet when it has to be in the P&L and vice versa. For me, it's wherever you are. So for example, there's some clients that come to me with Excel sheets, keeping track of everything. And I am all for it. I love it because one, that means you're involved with your expenses, right? If you're keeping track of an Excel sheet and you're saying, okay, this expense was for this expense was for this, then I know you're aware of what you're spending your money on. So I really believe in wherever you are at the moment. If you feel like Excel or a doc, like, a Google Doc, whatever you feel more comfortable with. Some people come old school. Some people write everything down to me. I have one of my clients that she wrote over 300 checks in 1 month. And I had to transition that to an accounting software, and I had to do 12 months of cleanup work. But for me, I meet the client wherever they are. So it's whatever you feel comfortable. And even then, it made me feel like back in the day when they give you those big slips, and I had to go over every single one, and then I had to transition it. So I feel like everyone has the permission to do whatever style works for them, but just have something done. Because then, like, let's say we go over your bank statements and you tend to forget what you spend that money on.
Yeah.
So it's really good for you to keep up with any kind of document.
It's funny, back when I started my first company at 25, some years ago, I was a marketing company, knew nothing about finance. So I got this CPA, and in fact, he said, well, my daughter just started out. She probably could work with you best, which was a good connection. So she had me buy those old, you might not have ever even seen them, those old ledgers where you put them on the little tabs and you write a check and it makes the duplicate, and then you do this and that. And the one thing though, I hadn't thought about that. I'm sorry, guys. I had to reminisce because when you said it, I had a picture of me at 25 writing out the little check with the duplicate and thinking I was so cool because I had my own little accounting system. But what I going back to what you said, which is so spot on, Dalia, is that at the end of the day, it has to be accurate. And one of the things that I always talk about is that accuracy, I always bring two other words into accuracy, and that's consistent and efficient. Because if it's not efficient and you're not doing it all the time, you're not going to be consistent. And one of the things that you mentioned about they put the expense in this category and then in this category, I'd like to spend a second talking about that, because I don't think people realize how much it could cause an issue come tax time when they stick something in this file folder and then stick it in this file folder. I don't think people think of accounting in needing to have the paper in the correct folder to the degree that they should think of that. You know what I'm saying on this?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think a lot of times people also have to come to understand that a company can offer more than one service.
Yeah.
Right. So for example, let's say there's a company that offers auto insurance, health insurance, life insurance. I don't want you sticking that under auto insurance where in reality it's a split, right? It's a portion of it is auto, a portion of it is life insurance, a portion is health insurance. So I see that happening a lot, where people get used to like, oh, well, this is the name of it. Like they just automatically think auto insurance, but then forget that they have other stuff, other services with this company. And it's very important for me just because auto insurance is different from regular business expenses in a way.
Right.
It goes in different areas when it's the tax portion side of things. Then you have to take to consideration, is my car, is my vehicle 100% deductible, or is this my work vehicle, or is this half and half? Is it my personal vehicle? Is it my business vehicle? So there's a lot that goes into it. So it's very important for people to really categorize things correctly, because it can really throw a lot of things off. And that number for auto expenses will be out the roof if you're coding it, like if you're coding your health insurance there, if your life insurance, your tax preparer may question you and say, why is this so expensive? And some may not.
You know, you bring up a perfect example with the insurance, because like as a S corp, you know, a tax as an S corp, I have to identify the officer's amount of health insurance because that's got to go on the W-2. It gets treated completely different. And as we were talking before the show, many times, unfortunately, the tax preparers for small companies are not going through and asking all of the questions that need to be asked. And so if you put something in a wrong category, they're not going to ask you, and then you could have your taxes filed incorrectly. And I always tell people, at the end of the day, you are responsible for the taxes. So before we go to the kind of questions and, you know, the ask my accountant, I want to just step back 1 second, because what you're really speaking of when you're talking about these categories is the chart of accounts. And, you know, people see that, they know that the software program creates a chart of accounts. If you're doing an Excel document, it's also needs to have a chart of accounts. And I don't hear too many people just basically talk about what a chart of accounts is, why it should be customized, that it shouldn't be way long and shouldn't be way short. So let's just have a good old-fashioned discussion and say, what exactly is the chart of accounts? What does it do? And why is it important? How about that?
I love this question just because I just had a CPA call me and she actually told me, Dalia, can you please create different chart of accounts for me and sell them to me? I'm just like, what? She said, because you're an expert for every industry. And what I do is I build my chart of accounts from scratch because I'm working with construction, property management, coffee shops, like every industry you can think about, music engineers. So I have to customize every single person's chart of accounts. But there is a standard chart of accounts where most people know a few standard items that are like, you know, you can expense. So I love this conversation because everyone always calls me and I just share my chart of accounts with them. But there is a standard chart of account, which is like your normal expenses that you're aware that you can write off, right? Which is like your cell phone. The meals are very interesting because a lot of people think that meals are 100% deductible, and that is not true. But like your office supplies, things like that, right? Which I call them standard, a standard chart of account. Now, what I realized just working in the accounting industry for a long time and then going into business, there's different chart of accounts where people like having numbers that represent a certain chart of account. So there's people who have like a certain number that represents office supplies, right? Or a certain number that represents paper, whatever the case may be. But in my world, we just have a chart of account that represents whatever the item is. So office supplies, that's the chart of accounts. Auto expenses, that's what it is. So chart of accounts is really depending on what business you are. I highly recommend for people, well, I know for some people it's a lot to go into the IRS website, like you said, and figure out based on your business, what can you write off, what you can't write off. But I highly recommend for you to even have like a one-time, you know, conversation with someone to help you get a better understanding of what you can write off. One, there's a lot of false information on social media sometimes, and that can be overwhelming. There's a lot of information on social media where sometimes it may not apply to your business. So that's one main key component I can tell people is to make sure that whatever you think is an expense to confirm with someone who tends to do taxes. And one, please work with someone who is very experienced in your line of work. Like that's very serious. There's people who are just like specialized with people in the construction industry, but don't know nothing about a coffee shop. I don't recommend you to work with a tax preparer in that area. Unless that person is willing to do homework and is willing to learn everything about your industry, then yes, I'll recommend you to work with them.
Yeah, there's some industries that just like the medical industry, the construction industry is one because of progress reports. A lot of times tax preparers can do multiple different industries, but there are some industries, especially if you got progress reports and weird inventory items, that it becomes very complex. Now, one of the things, and I totally agree with you about, understanding at least what the standard deductions, a trick of the trade that I do is this is a Loriism. I tell people to pull up a Schedule C. Now, that doesn't mean they're using the Schedule C. They may be a partnership or whatever, but under the Schedule C on that first page is the expenses, part 3, and it lists right nice in a nice order all the expense categories that the IRS considers, right? So I always tell people when you're doing a chart of accounts, at least have the Schedule C accounts listed. They are on all the tax returns. It's just the Schedule C has them listed so easily to access to look at. But you're correct. And then I talk a lot about, and let's say, okay, once we get past the standard one, one of the things I always tell people is the chart of accounts is a useful tool if you set it up properly. And I tell them, like, pretend it's the end of the year and you think, what question, if I knew the answer to, could I better manage the company? So even if we look at income, you may sit down and decide, I want to have my income separated by a subcategory of retail versus wholesale. So therefore, you have the ability to say at the end of the year, how much money did I make retail? How much money did I make wholesale? That's something that, syncing your software with a bank account's not going to do, but it can be a really important thing from understanding. And so in that, I kind of am talking about the difference between financial accounting, just getting the numbers ready for tax, and managerial accounting, managing it, and these separate Excel documents or Word documents, whatever you want to manage internally within the company. And I know you talked about tracking expenses, auditing things. Let's get some of your input on what things outside of just collecting the data to do a tax return should companies do to have their hands on the pulse of the finances of the company.
Well, I think just really want to talk about real quick about the subcategories, because I think there's a lot of CPAs that come to me and they say, Dalia, can you please provide me like a very straightforward Schedule C looking chart of accounts, right? And I have one of those.
Yeah, yeah.
And for me, I have to kind of explain to people, and I just want business owners on here. The chart of accounts should be to whatever makes you feel comfortable. So for me, I'm a big advocate for the business owner. And sometimes I have to tell the CPA, the reason why there's a lot of subcategories is because the business owner wants to know where exactly their money's going to. I don't just want to stick things to utilities. The business owners wants to know how much you're spending on electricity, how much you're spending on gas, like the breaking down, even with income. I have someone who has an agency and she provides event planning. She negotiates deals for her clients. She wants to know that any service that she brings into the business, she wants to know exactly what area is bringing her in the most money. So in her case, we had to break down her income to let her know, here's where your money's coming from the most. I want you to go 10 times harder with this because this is bringing you more money. So for me, subcategories are great. And sometimes someone who's preparing your taxes may say, I don't really care so much about the subcategories, but give yourselves permission to say, the reason why there's a subcategory is because I need this. I want to see the breakdown of everything. So I just wanted to say that.
Dalia, I'm so glad you said that. That was a beautiful point to bring up, because a lot of times I hear people say, well, my accountant put together my chart of accounts. And I say, well, then that may serve their purpose to fill out the tax forms, but it's not serving your purpose internally. And one of the things you mentioned really denotes the difference between an accountant, like accounting person, looking at your bookkeeping and looking at your business model and what you need to know, versus a tax preparer that's just filling out a form. They have and see, what I say is a lot of people don't understand those intricacies. They don't understand the differences between the two. They think that a tax preparer, their CPA, is also a good business coach, is also a good forecasting person, and is also a good processes, but they don't realize that it's a complete different discipline. So I appreciate you bringing that up, because to me, a chart of accounts is the key, because once you stick things in a folder, you don't have the details anymore. You just have the main number. It's like taking a file folder in the old fashioned days in one big folder. You stick everything in, you don't have the detail. And controlling your company financially properly is the details. And that's such a wonderful point. Continue with this concept you got about other aspects. I love the idea, the example you used of the event planner, where you're looking at where you're making the most money and then allocating the marketing accordingly. This is what I say when I say, use your numbers for decision making, to make strong decisions. And most people don't marry the financials and their decision making processes. They decide marketing based on competitors, not finances, as an example. So please continue on that.
Yes, so I like to meet with my clients every single month to go over the profit and loss statement. And I do it because for me, I love to tell my clients, we got to look at the data. And they're like, what do you mean data? I'm not this big company. And, you know, I don't have no analytics. I'm like, yes, you do. It's all in the profit and loss statement.
Yep.
So for me, I sit down with them and say, okay, talk to me about your income for this month. Because I noticed your income went down. They're like, well, I was feeling lazy this month. I didn't push as hard as I wanted to, or I didn't reach out to that company I usually reach out to. So it's kind of a wake up call. And also, you know what happened throughout the month, right? And then they realize, because I think people get so used to seeing their income kind of stay the same, or their income always do this, but they don't understand that sometimes your income does this based on behavior, based on the behavior of the environment, based on the behavior of what's going on in the world, sometimes based on your own behavior. So I see that a lot. So when we sit down and have the conversation about what we notice on expenses, a lot of times it's a beautiful thing, because a lot of people don't realize that they spend a lot of money on Amazon. And I can agree with every single client of mine. You know, you're an engineer or you're an event planner. Why are we spending so much money on office supplies? Like, where it's a lot of brain in these kind of industries, right? Or sometimes when I meet with my coffee shop clients, okay, well, we're spending a lot of money on supplies. Oh, well, we want to wholesale it, so we wanted a discount. Okay, well, let's keep in mind, we just bought like 600 of these items. Can we not spend no more? Let's make sure that we spend within 6 more months, right?
Yeah.
So having those conversations, because what happens is people get overwhelmed. They go on social media, or they get an alert, they get an email, and what pops up is marketing. Hey, if you can get 600 sleeves for like $300, or you're thinking it's an amazing deal, and you automatically forget that you just have 600 sitting in your storage room. So for me, it's a beautiful way to kind of audit your business and see what's going on. A lot of times too, with the breaking down of your services and how much money is bringing, sometimes it's kind of painful, because people are providing 3 to 4 services and they love all the services. And then sometimes we have to say, this service is not profitable at all. I think you need to focus on the ones that are bringing you money. You're actually losing money providing this service, because the cost it's costing you to even provide this service is not working out, or it's taking too much of your time, to the point that your reward is so little compared to something else. And it's easier for you to make money on this realm than make money on this realm. So people kind of have to, because people get overwhelmed with having to provide a lot of services. And I tell a lot of people, can't be a jack of all trades.
Right.
I'm sorry.
Yep. I'm so glad you said that too. People who watch the show a lot know me. I tell them that a lot of times I can fix companies that are not profitable by telling them to do less. because they're selling products or services that are not at the right gross profit margin and bringing them down. So yes, absolutely. That is a great point to bring up. And in that, what I want to point out to the audience as you were speaking, when you look at it every month, you can make a decision. You got the choice. You can be proactive. You can do a course correction, like I say. If you wait till the end of the year, you can't. You're already, it's done, you know, you don't have the chance to course correct. Because we talked about services a little bit, and I just want to go down this road and give you some thoughts. One of the things I always say, and see what your experience has, is the companies that sell services, especially their own services, let's say like a web designer or something, because a lot of times they fail to have any internal tracking of their own time. They think they're selling at this dollar an hour, but they're getting paid under minimum wage because they're not realizing tracking their time is no different than tracking the amount of wood to make a chair if they sell chairs. So I see a lot of service businesses not having a consciousness, not having an awareness, whatever word you want to use, about what it's really costing them to deliver the service, and especially change orders. I know you probably have had some experience on that. Can you speak to that a little bit too?
Yes, so it's very interesting because my clients always tell me, why do you ask me questions that like catch them off guard? And a lot of times I'll see money coming in. And then when we're reviewing their books, I'll ask them, like, just so simple, you know, gentle, how long it took you to make this money? And they'll say, what do you mean? I said, how long did it take you to make this dollar amount? And they'll say, well, you know, I was working little by little, kind of took me a week or two. I said, oh, so you're now putting yourself in an hourly rate. And they're like, what? I said, wouldn't it have been nice if you would have got paid this dollar amount and finished it in one day? And they were like, yeah, I never thought about it. And if by you finishing it in one day or 2 to 3 days, you were more available to bring in more clients. When you spread your work out, you start to feel like you already have so much to do on your list. And not only that, it doesn't push you forward to bring in another client or to provide services. And a lot of people started doing, like a lot of my clients started doing that. And they noticed the amount of anxiety started going away. And now what they say is when before considering someone to bring on board, like, you know, a client, they say, okay, I'm gonna charge this client this dollar amount. I think I can finish this within 2 to 3 days. Okay, this is worth it. So now they're seeing clients in a whole different level, like potential clients. Sometimes even myself, I get the dollar amount looks so big, but then I have to consider the amount of headache, the amount of hours, the amount of work. Is it worth it? Well, it's only worth it if I finish it in this time period. Can't afford to do that right now. And then that's what gives me the confidence.
You know, on that, it brings us down one of those topics that is kind of a conversation people don't like to discuss. And it's probably not a topic you thought we would talk about, accounting. So I'm just going to throw one at you. You ready? Okay. You know, I always tell people that you can't be in this desperate mode where you grab every customer or client that you can. Some people, it's better not to do business with. And sometimes you just got to say, this isn't going to pay me enough. It's going to be, like you said, too frustrating. And so you were right on the edge. And I thought, you know what, let's talk about the fact that even though we feel desperate, we can't act desperate. We have to understand the finances. Talk about that a little bit.
Yes, I think a lot of times, a lot of people in the accounting industry come to me because they see my life, right? And they're just like, Dalia, you're married, you have 3 kids, all underneath the age of 8 years old. You cook, like my work hour is done at 3 p.m. I'm cooking a home cooked meal every single day. And then after 3 p.m., I shut down. It's family time, right? So a lot of people say, how can you manage to have this successful accounting firm and not work as much as I do? And I tell them all the time, every potential client that comes my way, I have to see if it's worth it. I have to see I never let the dollar amount move me. I never do. I evaluate the type of client I'm talking to. I evaluate the type of work, because time and time again, a lot of people who have accounting firms or bookkeeping firms, what happens with them, they tend to have 30 clients, and I talk to them a month later, they still have 30 clients they need to work on. You know what happens? You keep getting backed up, and you never feel like you're finishing. And I don't like that feeling at all.
I love what you just said. And I keep telling, and I'm trying to drill this message in, is that companies are there for us. Our own company are there for us. It's there to give us finances, but it's also there to give us a life, a lifestyle. And I think for too many years, and the younger generation, I have to say, is doing better about not buying into this. They were sold that when you start a company, you sign up, you give your blood to it, you work nonstop, you do that. And I say, bull, no, life, you can be gone tomorrow, you know? And so I don't think that necessarily working to that extreme gets you any further ahead. And I think it's important to find that work-life balance. And 3 kids under 8, oh my God, I can't even imagine that, and running a company. But you know what, Dalia? Time and time again, and those that are frequent flyers on the show knows we have guests on that talk about the life they have, how it's serving them as well, it's giving them pleasure, and hopefully doing a little bit of a paradigm change in this concept of I'm a slave to my company. I don't think that's the way to approach it.
It's not. And me, I can testify. I've been a 9 to 5 worker who made no more than 35,000 a year, and I was still happy. I learned how to manage 35,000. I have made over 6 figures in my business and still live the same lifestyle. I have made less than 100,000 in my business and still live the same lifestyle, because money is not gonna. When I made 100,000, I didn't think nothing of it in the sense of my life is going to be more better. If anything, I was just like, oh, savings account is looking great, right?
Yep.
And savings account is looking great because I know business is not always going to be great. I want it to always be great, but I know that businesses are affected by how the world is going, right? When people get scared, businesses start to slow down. So for me, when I was making that amount of money, I said, you know, Dalia, let's save this money, because there is going to be a moment in time where your business is not going to touch this figure amount. And then it puts me in a position where when I don't even make half of what I made before, I don't feel like I got to grab any and every client, right, that comes my way. Not only that, I think it's great for people to partner with other people who are in your same industry. For me, I always say it. Other accounting firms, bookkeeping firms are not my competition. They are my referral partners. So sometimes there's a client coming my way and I don't feel like doing a very stressful job at that time being, because I'm probably in a season where I want to focus on my family, I want to focus on my mental, or I don't want to work so much. I recommend it to someone who is available to take that client. So I think it's kind of understanding that you go into, I tell everyone, I remember the day I decided to go in business. I honestly said, why do I want a business? Well, I'm tired of feeling some sort of way when I can't show up to work because my child's sick, or when I have to leave work because daycare told me to pick up the child. Everyone's giving me ugly faces. What if I don't feel like waking up early this day? Or I remember feeling like I just want to be more in control of my life and be in control where I don't feel like the company is mad at me or someone is looking at me any kind of way. But I think what happens to people, I tell people every single day, I remind myself I went into business so I can be free to do what I want and to go with every emotion I feel like that day. If I want to work all day that day, then so be it. But if I don't want to work tomorrow, I give myself that permission to do that. But a lot of people go in business and just feel like, I gotta hit this dollar amount. I gotta hit this dollar amount, this dollar amount. And then they end up losing themselves, or they end up creating health problems because they took on too much they can carry. And then the problem is now, on top of having to complete all this work, they're trying to find someone that can help them do the work. And a lot of times it's not easy to find a bookkeeper who can manage more than one client, because if anything, that bookkeeper will open her own business. So it's a
Right.
lot to think about.
Well, and also, I love it, a beautiful conversation. And then what I find is that people end up with a higher demand. They don't have good profit margins. They bring in additional people to help. Those people are making more money than the owner actually is. Have you seen that a million times? Where what they really could have done is just slightly increase their price point, maybe sold less, had more money, and had a time off. So when you get into this just grow, demand, sell more, build more. It's been just sold to too many people that is the progression, like was sold to my life, that you're supposed to have a picketed house and I think it was 2 kids and 2-car garage, right? And that wasn't true. I think that was the line I got. You guys at your age didn't get that line. Anybody who was in the audience at my age, you know that line, right? You can tell me in the chat. Wasn't it 2 kids, 2 cars, or something like that? But still, the entrepreneur world, 2.5 kids, Sadie said. That's
With a
hilarious.
dog, probably.
She's right. It was 2.5 kids. Now that she says that, it was. But I think just like I got sold that, the millennials got sold on this: start a company, be an entrepreneur, work all the time, sell it someday. When I'm like, no, just create a company that creates an existence. That's so true. But I'm going to bring up a strange word for us, but I got a feeling you can run with this too. But we got to be honest, it needs a little bit of this word. You ready? You ready? Here we go.
Yes.
Discipline.
Ooh,
I
I
know.
love that.
I said it. I said it out loud. I said the D word. I did.
Yes.
Do you want to run with that one?
Yes. Discipline reminds me a lot of the word committed. And I just started this whole thing, Committed with Dalia, because I had to sit down with myself and say, like, everything I do is a commitment. And discipline is exactly, it corresponds with each other, right? I think when you're a business owner, and we talk about this, life balance, as business owners, we take advantage of our freedom as well. And I'm gonna be honest, there's moments where I find myself not working for 2 weeks because I just know I can. And then when I look at the numbers and I say, okay, Dalia, why didn't you bring in so much? Because you didn't want to you didn't want to go out there and network. You didn't want to out there and expose yourself to more people. You didn't make no calls. So discipline has a lot to do with being a business owner, because sometimes you do get over carried away with having so much freedom. Also, because you don't have no one telling you like you have to work these set hours, you find yourself scrambling sometimes the last minute, right before you have to turn in the profit and loss statement, because you probably didn't do it in the beginning, or you find yourself delaying. Let's say you get a client and you tell this client, I'm going to have this work done in a week, and then you find yourself telling that client, oh, give me another week. And discipline has to do a lot with with your representation, right? Because if you're not disciplined to execute in the timely manner that you promised the client, that's going to reflect your business. So for me, I am a person, as soon as I take in a new client and I tell them I'll be done with it within 2 weeks, I'm done with it in 1 week. And everyone is just like, whoa. And for me, I want the client to know that I understand you haven't done 12 months of bookkeeping, right? So for me, I know how important it is to get this out to your tax preparer, not just for your tax preparer to work on your account, but on your business taxes, but for you to know what's your real numbers. Like, I don't want you to wait another week. So that's how I feel about discipline.
You know what? With you saying that know your real numbers, one of the things that strikes me in our conversation, I'm going to point it out for the audience, but they're probably already noticing it, is that as we're talking about bookkeeping, we're realizing or experiencing through you a complete different conversation, because you're not just saying set up these accounts. You're saying, let's look at the numbers. Why are you spending this money on the office supplies? What are you doing with your income? Why are you offering these services that don't sell? And what I just want to point out is the great benefit of when you have a partnership with whoever is doing your bookkeeping, where they're asking you the questions and explaining it, versus just a technology person that's maybe been trained by QuickBooks, right? But they don't have any accounting background, and they're just putting the syncing of the data, and they're not offering this kind of support. So I noticed it immediately with our conversation, and it's what I'm always talking about. When you look for a bookkeeper, look for somebody that understands your numbers and are asking about your business. And can you comment a little bit more about your method and what people need to understand of the advantages, disadvantages when you hire somebody that's just, you know what I mean by when I say just a technology person, just understands the technology and not the bookkeeping? I think you know what I'm saying by that.
Yeah, I do. It's very interesting because I have partnered with several CPAs, and a lot of times they tell me, Dalia, I only send certain kind of clients to you. And they tell me, I have teamed up with several bookkeepers, but I know the type of bookkeeper you are. And you're the one who don't mind handholding the client. You're the one who wants to work with the clients, who want to strategize, who wants to learn, who wants their business to succeed so well. They don't just want a bookkeeper that's just going to turn in the profit and loss statement every single month, right? Every single new month. So for me, I take it, it's interesting. I always tell the client, I know you're interviewing me, but I'm also interviewing you, because the type of bookkeeper I am, I'm not going to be someone who's just going to turn in your profit and loss statement and notice something on it and not have that conversation with you, right? So I think it's very important to find yourself a bookkeeper that if she does see that you have more expenses than last month, for you guys to have an open conversation. Another thing I do with my clients in the beginning of them coming on board, I tell them, talk to me about your personal life. Talk to me about your desires. Talk to me about, like, what do you want to do within this year or next year? A lot of them tell me, I have never been on a vacation, or I have never taken a day off. I worked all my life and I just want to spend time with my family. So I tell them, if you do what I say, and if we can adjust some things, then I guarantee you, I can tell you when to take the vacation. And a lot of times for them, they look forward to that call, like, hey, you can now take a vacation next week, or whatever the case may be. You can afford it now. A lot of times too, what I notice is I have a lot of cleanup jobs. Like, people come to me for cleanup jobs, and I tell everyone, just become my recurring client. And a lot of times for them, they prefer to pay me one huge chunk at once, just before taxes are due, just so they can get it out the way, because they feel in their mind that they can't afford to pay me month by month. They feel like it's easier for them to hustle that huge chunk and go get it and come back and pay me, and then not think about it. And I tell them a lot of times, well, one thing about doing your cleanup job, I was able to break it down month by month as well. And I'm able to tell them, if you cut back from this, then you'll be able to afford me. And it'll be something like Amazon shopping, ignorant shopping sometimes, because it's like little bitty stuff that they don't really need, or DoorDash or Postmates the time. I'm like, you're getting Postmates 3 times a day. Do you know you can afford my services if you probably just decide to do it 1 or 2 times a day? Because my services aren't expensive. And then I break it down. I said, you pay me this chunk once, but if you pay me every single month, this is what you'll pay me. And it's obviously a way smaller number. And for them, it's just like, oh.
And I think too, Yeah, I think too, sometimes, and a lot of times it's because people don't realize the benefit of what these numbers would help them to manage and do course correction. And so that, you know, what it reminds me to, it's not just the money I'm assuming here, it's that they think their numbers are just about the tax returns, not realizing their numbers are about managing the company better and
Exactly.
making choices in course correction, which is something I communicate to all the time. It's about making choices and correction. Well, as we're getting close to the end, I can't believe it's been almost a whole hour. I want to first of all make note to everybody in the chat. I put Dalia's information in. I put her website, her phone number, how to get in touch with her. It's all there. Sadie, could you take and copy and paste it and put it in the chat again so people see it? Also, Christine has a question I want to address. She says, if you have more than one company in completely different industries, do you recommend using the same accountant for both, or should I have different accountant for each business?
I recommend using an accountant that works with more than one industry. Do not have different that's a whole rabbit hole you're going to dig yourself
I
into.
agree.
Work with someone who works with a lot of industries. So I know I work with a lot of industries. Laura, you work with a lot of industries as well,
Tons.
right?
Yeah. In fact, I always say that after, you know what, 30 years of turnaround in the SBDC, there's not an industry I haven't touched. There's industries I don't like as much, but there's not an industry that I haven't been in. I think I have seen just about all of them at this point. Even farming and all kinds of unique industries. It's amazing. But yeah, that's when you really get a full understanding of the basics. So, you know, first of all, I want to say thank you for coming on, because this was such a great discussion. And what I loved about our discussion is we somehow managed, which I don't even know how this happened, but we managed to take serious accounting, chart of accounts, blended in with lifestyle choices, how to have, you know, decisions in your company help you to create a lifestyle you want, how to be disciplined in your approach, and how to take time for you and your family. I mean, that's pretty interesting that we got all of that together in 1 hour, right? I mean, it far exceeded. Sadie said at the beginning, I told her I was tired and needed a coffee, and she said, by the time you're done with this, you're going to feel so excited about life. And you know, it's true. It really has been a good conversation. And why I say that is I'm all about empowering people, taking back control, having a company that supports you. And on that, I have to say one other thing is I really like how you talked about your competitors being referrals, because I think as small companies, as we group together as well and support each other, we can be that powerful big company, right? And more powerful with more flexibility. But I want to give it back to you with our remaining minutes. Last words, last thoughts for the audience.
Yes. One thing I also want to highlight that I think we didn't speak about today was just having books every single month and just being on top of your books every single month also tends to help you on strategizing for taxes. I think a lot of times when people come to a bookkeeper, like you come to a bookkeeper, let's say 2023, and you have her working on your 2022 books, had you worked with her or had you had books every single month, you would have been able to strategize or save money towards taxes, or kind of have an estimate of what it's looking like you're going to owe taxes on, or kind of have an estimate of how much you're not going to owe. It just depends. And I think everyone deserves to have peace of mind throughout the year. So I just want I want everyone to understand that having books is not just it's also beneficial because you kind of look how you're already looking ahead of time of what your tax year is going to look like. And you can begin to kind of have those conversations with your tax preparer, where if you are bringing a lot of money, you can ask them like, oh, what strategy should I implement? Should I invest money into a Roth IRA right now because I have the money right now? So it's a lot of benefits to it. Sometimes certain CPAs would tell their client, well, you brought in so much money. I remember you telling me you wanted to buy a new car, whatever the case may be. I think it's perfect time for you to do it right now because there's a lot of benefits for electric cars, whatever the situation may be. I really want to say that. And then another thing is, I just highly recommend everyone to just, tune into stuff like this. Lori, she takes a lot. Like, I love how she's very considering who she's going to bring on here. this podcast is not like other podcasts where you're just hearing what the social media world wants you to hear. This is not a type of marketing podcast. This is really us talking to people who have real lives and just say, avoid the pressure of the social media world, avoid the pressure. You take your business in a direction that you want to take it. If you want to work so hard this year, then go for it. But don't let someone else convince you to work hard because this is the thing to do. Don't let someone convince you that you're going to work until you have $1 million in your bank account. You go based on whatever season you're going through because it's not always going to be a bright season. So go with the emotion.
That's beautiful. And thank you for saying that. Yes, I am so particular who comes on the show. You know, I audit, I got the gates closed, I check the people. I have people say, hey, you know, so-and-so wants to be on your show. I'm like, no, nope, that's not going to work. It's, you know, it's a self-interest. There, you've got to have information for the audience. So thank you so much. Well, you've got you and a few others. I've got probably a handful. I'm calling you my regulars. You're going to be here. Please, anybody who wants to get in touch with Dalia, I got her information in the chat. Reach out to her. But whoever you use, make sure they're having the kind of conversations like we had. Make sure that you're not just getting somebody to put in your numbers. And if you do have somebody that's just syncing the data, have a business coach to have these discussions, even if you're your own business coach. You just somehow these discussions about how you're running the business has to come up on a daily basis. Okay, Sadie, you want to come back on and shut us down here?
I mean, informative as always. You know, don't tell Lauren this, but when I get the call, I'm like, yay, what am I going to learn about today? So this one, I really appreciate it because, you know, it's very nice to know that we're all in this together. And like, I think that we were talking about, like, you know what, as a small business owner, entrepreneur, it's overwhelming. But when you become into a network, a camaraderie, it's like, you know what, we're all in this. It's okay. Just do your thing and it's going to be okay with strategy and planning.
Yep, absolutely. So with that, Sadie, before you shut down, can you get, or if you don't have it, you let me know, I can grab it real quick. I'm talking on there. I know somebody in the chat asked if there's a link to the past shows. You may have it and you may not, Sadie. So
Yes, I put it in there, but I didn't put
excellent. You already did it. Okay, you already did it to the link. I wanted to make sure we got that. I didn't know you know what? You're becoming a regular. You have all the information there. So
I mean, I'm about to get that screen going on because I heard, I'm like, the folks wanted it. I was like, you guys want the, you know, this video? Let me figure that out for you guys.
Oh, awesome. I don't catch everything because the chat goes by way too quick. As you know, it's the party, but sometimes I look at it real quick to make sure everybody's getting what they need. Okay, so with that, we got to close down this show. Dalia, thank you again. I'm going to be back in touch with you in the new year so we can have another discussion. I think these are so wonderful. Thank you to our frequent flyers and those of you who are new. Thank you for joining the show. We will be here next week with another fabulous discussion on Small Biz Talk with your host, Lori Williams. See you next week. Bye, everybody.
Bye.